do you like your fragrance? How about musty, with notes of racism and cultural appropriation? Fashion giant Dior spotted a gap in the market for an ad campaign drawing on colonial ideas about Native Americans and decided it would happily fill it. So it depicted its fragrance Sauvage, a word which means wild in French, but shares a common origin with English concepts of savage, with brand ambassador Johnny Depp in the desert, while a Native American dancer and actress performed in the wilderness. It even claimed to be capable of a journey deep into the authentic Native American soul. I don't know what's more disturbing, the fact that Dior came up with this, or that they thought it would sell. The only wild thing about this ad is how culturally insensitive, insulting and racist it is. And Majid, I know that you have something to say, but before you do, let's have a look at the ad so people know exactly what we're speaking about. Here is the Sauvage campaign.
Yes, looks like quite stereotypical images there.
And I think the critique was both what people have described as the kind of feathers and leathers depiction of Native American culture, but also the idea of co-opting that culture for a fragrance that is called Sauvage.
Yeah, it's difficult to see that name next to that depiction without thinking, what were they thinking? Like, and that really, I think, is the main point there, which is somebody clearly didn't see the connection.
This is a wind-up.
I'm wondering why they
just sitting there nodding.
No, but Nick, my point is, here's my thing. Right?
The nation's about to fall off the bloody cliff, and you're worried about someone with a guitar and perfume.
I'm meant to be responding to this topic.
Dear.
There I was thinking you could see where we're coming from.
Yeah. So they could look. The point is that there's a history of depictions of Native Americans on American television. You know, that we all grew up on, that was basically, you know, cowboys and Indians, shoot the bad guys, dehumanized in media, referred to as Indians, referred to as savages. These are words that were actually used. And so for the native population in the United States of America, seeing their traditions juxtaposed with the word savage resonates on a deeper level, which I think we do need to try and understand. Yeah. The fashion houses have been somewhat, I think, ignorant in the way they've addressed some of these themes. There was the recent Dolce & Gabbana thing in China where they had to apologize profusely because they tried to depict a Chinese model trying to eat Italian food with chopsticks. I think they're tone deaf, and I think they do need to be a bit more, especially these continental European houses, a bit more sensitive to certain words that have been historically used in media to depict people in a bad light.
Well, of course, you're all absolutely right, aren't you? Yeah, well, I mean, Johnny Depp should never work again. Yeah. Hollywood should never give him another film. We should probably boycott all this. No, I agree with you. Just as I agree that former Love Island contestant Megan Barton Hanson with cornrows was wrong. Rodri the coal miner on a packet of Welsh crisps was wrong. Students wearing sombreros is wrong. Jamie Oliver's jerk rice, M&S fake biryani. For the love of all that's holy. Haven't you three got things to worry about?
You're talking about cultural appropriation, which is not a word either of us used.
Because nothing to worry about.
The dancer, there were two natives featured in this advert.
Presumably they willingly did it.
So they willingly did it, and it was in association with.
Can I come in here?
Before you do, the Americans for Indian Opportunity have actually issued a statement.
Let me come in and
let's hear the Americans for.
Okay, because we've heard.
Well, no, we need to hear less from you for a moment.
I haven't said a word, actually,
the Americans for Indian Opportunity want to say something, right? So this is what they said. The Perfumes Christian Dior project is part of AIO's advanced indigeneity campaign to change the misperceptions about Native Americans, to share accurate American history, to build awareness about Native Americans as contemporary peoples, and to promote indigenous worldviews. Parfums Christian Dior were very open to learning about contemporary Native peoples and were committed to avoiding cultural appropriation. So they did it in consultation with them.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. But what I will say is it was still, you know, though they tried, I acknowledge they tried, it was so tone deaf, and I'm wondering what they were thinking.
I'm looking at that, and to be honest, for the life of me, I don't say anything wrong. The Dior, you just said, worked with this very, very well-respected consulting group called Americans for Indian Opportunity. Native Americans were very much part of the productions. There was a native advisor on the set at all times, and the girl you saw on there, a girl called Tanya Beatty, you say she's been on social media slating. What she actually says here, she says Dior, she believes, although misguided, had every intention of showing indigenous culture in a beautiful light while giving jobs to some Indians in the process. And isn't that the point? You know, this cultural appropriation nonsense drives me nuts. If you live in a multicultural society, what you call cultural appropriation is inevitable. I don't call it cultural appropriation. I call it appreciating and admiring.
That's something completely different.
Differences and adversity. It's stupid to imagine we can't admire or borrow from other people's culture. You asked to finish your point. Let me. It's ridiculous to suggest we can't borrow or admire other people's cultures without insulting them.
Carol, you've just revealed that you do not understand the distinction between cultural exchange and cultural appropriation, which is an important distinction and one that's central to this.
I saw a documentary a few years ago. It's called Inventing the Indian, and it was by Rich Hall and Dallas Goldtooth, and it explained the history of what Majid was referring to, the depiction of Native Americans, the terrible stereotyping that went on in Hollywood and on screens. It reminded me a little bit of Real Bad Arabs, which was made earlier, and it was it was by Jack Shaheen, and it was about the same thing, the way that people from the Middle East are basically either belly dancers or terrorist bombers on screen. And I think that when we talk about cultural borrowing goes on all the time. That's great, nobody's talking about that. But when there is a power dynamic, when there is a structural imbalance, let me finish, when countries and peoples were subjugated on the basis of a power dynamic that meant that they were portrayed as inferior, as uncivilized, as barbarian, as savage.
None of that's on that ad.
Obviously, when a company like Dior makes something for profit, obviously that dynamic is going to play into it and is completely insensitive to it.
This is a Native American dancing.
Can I say, so I personally object to this from just because the word savage is juxtaposed next to a native. On the appropriation argument, I'm not so... I just think it's a bit too in your face to put this word sauvage next to a native who's been historically called that as a pejorative.
Exactly.
Let's hear what House of Dior actually say. The campaign was inspired by the deep and rich nature of the Native American heritage and culture which the House of Dior holds in the highest regard. The House of Dior worked closely with Native American consultants, artists, writers and dancers, as well as the Americans for Indian Opportunity, to ensure accuracy and inclusion. They go on. In acknowledgement of these reactions, the trailer has now been removed and the new campaign will be released later. At least I know what I'm getting you for Christmas now.
Very funny.
You're going to love it, aren't you?
We could talk about this more, but we won't today, because before we go, there's just time for this. New to the job, no real experience. No, I'm not talking about our new Prime Minister. One man who truly knows the meaning of a do-or-die strategy is Australian Max Sylvester. The trainee pilot was taking part in his first ever flying lesson when his teacher passed out mid-flight. Rather than panic, quick-thinking Max worked out how to call an air traffic operator who was able to talk him through how to make an emergency landing. After nearly an hour, Max safely landed the plane and his instructor was taken off to hospital where he's making recovery. Here's what Max had to say about the experience.
I'd hope I'd make it. You know, it's just one of them things you just have to deal with. It's a situation that you've been thrown in front of and you need to react. It was a sort of fight and flight. That was it.
Mate, you're a bit of an inspiration to a lot of people.
Yeah, don't think so. I'm just a student pilot doing what we've been trained to do.
For showing us the sky's the limit, Max, you are our have-a-go hero of the week.
How did you work out how to ring the traffic controller?
I have no idea.
I don't think it's ringing.
That's all we've got time for this week, guys. But don't forget, you can join in the debate. Just search for The Pledge on Twitter to have your say. And The Pledge is also available to listen to every week. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or the Sky News app. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.